All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for those of you that have joined. My name is Mahin Ahmed. I am a board member for MSA National, and we're joined here today with a number of speakers, mashallah, who are all excited to be talking about the topic of faith on campus. So before we begin, I want to ask for those of you that have joined in, if you can list your name and your school on the comment section for the video so we can learn more about where each of you are from. And I'll explain a bit about what we'll be talking about today. So the topic of the conversation is faith on campus. And we're talking to the speakers today about how we can find clarity and conviction as students. So for those of you that have joined, many of you are most likely MSA students or community leaders. And hopefully, inshallah, through hearing the speakers, we'll be able to find out more about how we can foster spaces of belonging and to grow as Muslim students on our campuses. I know many of us have strong MSAs on campus. Even if you don't, this is a good time to learn more about how we can grow stronger communities for Muslims on our campuses. And throughout everything that the speakers talk about, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box as well, the same place where you're typing in your names and where you're from. And from there, we'll answer your questions at the end. The program will essentially be our speakers going on for 15 minutes each. And then we'll have a couple announcements throughout, and then a question and answer session at the end, inshallah. So with that, I think we can begin. So let's start with our first speaker, and I'll introduce each speaker before you can go ahead and unmute yourselves and put on your webcam. Our first speaker is Dr. Samira Ahmed. Dr. Samira is the director of the Family and Youth Institute. She holds a PhD in clinical psychology from Farley Dickinson University. Her areas of interest include risk behaviors and protective factors of Muslim adolescents and young adults, which is a great topic for Muslim students on campus, alhamdulillah. And she promotes culturally and religiously meaningful psychotherapy. She's published numerous journals, articles, book chapters, and she's a co-editor of the book Counseling Muslims, Handbook of Mental Health Issues and Interventions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Samira Ahmed, inshallah. I think you're still on mute, Dr. Samira. There you go.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for putting this presentation together, this conversation, MSA National and Yaqeen. I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have. And what I want to do is start our conversation by contextualizing what's going on campus. And then inshallah, the other speakers can continue the conversation to kind of add different nuances for us. So for many of you who are on campus, this is an exciting time period for many of you because there's so many different changes going on. In college, you're often faced with increased independence and opportunities to try new things and reinvent yourself. And this is when many of us are exploring different aspects of our identities, such as who am I? What does Islam mean to me? What does it mean to be Black and Muslim? What does it mean to be a woman? And what do we do? What do I want to do with my life, right? So with this greater independence and opportunities, we also have exposure to new influences, both positive and negative. And this creates an environment for exploration, trying new things, new ways of being. And while all of these exciting possibilities are present, this can also be a time which causes confusion, causes doubt, loneliness, a strong desire to be part of something greater, to be part of a group, to belong. And so as a result, we see a lot of different things happening on campus, some positive while others are negative. Some of the positive things we're seeing on campus is, not only are people learning and growing in their profession, they're also growing in their deen, but they're also applying their deen and becoming agents of change not just for the Muslim community, but also for greater society. And that's truly inspiring. But some of the negative things many of you may be seeing on campus are the risk behaviors. And at the Family and Youth Institute, we've conducted research on this topic, and we found that 1 in 2 Muslim college students report consuming alcohol in the past year. In terms of drug use, 1 in 3 reported using in the last year. 1 in 2 reported tobacco use. So the question is, what's going on? Why are people using? Some reasons they indicated were they want to have fun, to decrease stress, peer pressure, or just simple curiosity, right? We also find that 1 in 2 Muslim college students report engaging in premarital sex, and many more were engaging in unprotected sex, which is scary, right? And for those of you who are interested in knowing more about these studies, if you go to our website, thefyi.org, the details of the methodology and findings are available, as well as the limitations. So please go there and look at that for greater information. But I think what we want to do is kind of contextualize what's going on. Now, when people hear these findings, sometimes they assume these individuals don't care about Islam, which is inaccurate. Many of these individuals in the study reported that Islam is very important to them. However, in this time period of change, exploration, experimentation, confusion, there are other challenges and factors that impact their choices and behaviors that we need to consider. And so in a separate study that we did at the FYI, we asked college students what were their 4 biggest challenges. And they responded that first, lack of support from family, friends, and community. Second, issues of identity. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be, who am I? But also issues with religious beliefs and values. And fourth, discrimination. Now, for the purpose for tonight, I just want to highlight a few thoughts related to challenges related to religious beliefs. And so what we see in terms of religious beliefs from Muslim college students is over and over again, across the board, Muslim, non-Muslim, everyone reports that their religious beliefs are important to them. However, across all religions, we see a decrease in religious activity during this time period. And the question is why? Well, what we find is that Muslim college students, as well as those of other faiths, believe in the basic principles, meaning there is a higher being, they believe that there is a need to be kind and good and just. They believe in the importance of social justice. These values and beliefs continue to be part of their worldview. But their participation in rituals such as salah, such as religious activities or institutions such as the masay or masjids, the masajids, that decreases. And the decrease is due to a number of factors, 2 of which I'll highlight today. So one of those factors is how we teach Islam. The second factor is a lack of religious literacy, basically knowledge and understanding. Now, in terms of literacy, in terms of lack of religious literacy, our research found that people said they didn't know much about Islam. They didn't know much about their faith or how to apply it within our current context. Research by the Yaqeen team also reported an increase in young people professing that they doubt Islam. And what's exciting is now the Yaqeen team is looking and working to address those specific issues and topics that were addressed and really try to tackle them head on and provide solutions. So we asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide their efforts and make the Yaqeen team successful in their endeavors. Ameen. Now, most of you on campus also know that there are a lot of people who aren't even interested in learning about Islam and increasing their religious literacy or their knowledge, right? We're often content with having Islam as just one of our cultural identities. And this is because of their prior experiences with Islam, also referred to as religious socialization. And so let me just speak briefly about this. In addition to religious literacy, we also need to understand the process of religious socialization. How are our values, beliefs, and attitudes formed? How do they impact our current beliefs and practice? And this is one of the areas that the Family and Youth Institute is really exploring. And I ask that you make dua for our team to guide and bless our efforts to better serve the community, inshallah. Um, Now, in brief, when we know that religious development is a process of meaning making, right? And it's dependent on a number of different factors. Islam is not the issue because that information is there, it's complete, we know that. But it's how Islam is taught, how it is experienced and internalized, that impacts our connection with the deen. We know from the research that the following factors impact our religious values, attitudes, and practice. Specifically, the context. Who is in our environment and how do they believe? How do they practice? How do they engage with Islam? Now, be it your parents, friends, mentors, teachers, they may all have positive or negative influences on our early religious experiences. Now, what is our history or experience with these individuals in our environment? Now, our initial experiences with Islam, how Islam is taught to us, is exemplified in our childhood, impacts our future interests, attitudes, and practice of Islam, right now here on campus, right? So if our experience with Islam is that religious people are rigid, that they're judgmental and irrelevant, it impacts how we see Islam and what it means to us. However, if we have a positive experience with the people in our environment who are teaching us Islam and socializing us to Islam, we are more likely to have a positive relationship with Islam and want to more connect with Islam, right? So that's one factor. Another factor that impacts how we feel about Islam and how much we want to connect is kind of these diffuse contexts, right? The society, media, or educational context. For example, when you think of the quest for spirituality and the search for the sacred in pop culture, right? It's often associated with subtle positive vibes. Think of hipsters, think of the rise of Buddhism on campus and among celebrities, right? However, when we think about religiousness practiced within religious institutions, such as the MSA, masjid, or churches, right? It's often viewed negatively by society. So, but why is a hipster's search for truth any better than your search for knowledge in a halaqah? So that perception has an impact on how we view ourselves as well as how other people view us and our search for knowledge. So we see society and media have an impact on how we collectively and subconsciously view religion and religion's practice. Similarly, the current discourse, the public discourse on Muslim youth, i.e., meaning that every Muslim runs the risk of becoming radicalized, and the concern that if I become religious, will people think I'm becoming radicalized, either family, friends, or on campus? That too has a negative impact on our psyche. We internalize it. We internalize the concern. We internalize the fear. We internalize the negativity. And so when we think about it, all of these developmental factors can have a positive or negative effect on our religious development. And it's mediated by what psychologists refer to as the person context fit. Now, I'm not going to go into all of those technical terms, but for those of you who are interested, I'm just going to refer to you to some papers that might be helpful. On our website, FYI.org, you can go to the State of American Muslim Youth Report and the book Emerging Adults, Religiousness and Spirituality. Both of that information can be found there. But to summarize the idea, while our natural fitra is to believe, if we didn't grow up in a family that encouraged the practice of Islam, had no space or place for women, or was very racist, and we live in a society that thinks Islam and Muslims are backwards or are a threat, for many people, this would not be a good fit. So they distance themselves from Islam and Islamic institutions. Now, those of you who are here listening tonight to this new project that Yaqeen is offering likely had some positive experience some positive exposure to Islam from somebody in your context, right? While you may have unanswered questions and you want to connect with our deen in a more deeper fashion, there was something positive in your experience of Islam that helped you in this journey. Most of you likely found out a way to navigate through these issues with the help of a mentor, either on campus, in the masjid, through positive peer influence by your friends, or even tarbiyat at home, from your parents, extended families. So there was some positive element. And this is important for you to understand, for all of us to understand, for when we're working with or trying to invite our brothers and sisters on campus who may not be so interested and may not be as excited about learning more about Islam and becoming better Muslims. But it helps you be a little bit more, it helps you to be more empathetic. And as you reach out and connect with other Muslims on campus, understand why they may be a little bit more hesitant, why they may not have the same excitement. And so I wanted to kind of start our conversation out kind of contextualizing that. And then help, when you start connecting them, to help use the resources of your theme to help address the issues and questions that are on your minds and all of our minds, either on campus or in the community. And so what I'd like to do now is just turn it over to the next speaker to talk about other aspects of issues on campus, as well as specific solutions that can be implemented on campus, inshallah. Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Samira. I really appreciate you contextualizing our conversation today and in a way setting the stage so that we understand what our youth, our Muslim youth, are facing in today's climate. If you just joined, thank you for coming and joining the webinar. This is on Faith on Campus by Yaqeen Institute and MSA National. If you're watching this on the YouTube page, which I'm assuming you all are, you may be seeing attendees mentioning their schools and cities in the chat boxes. So we'd love to hear more about where you are from, if you'd like to add that on there as well. There's also a poll, if you can take a minute to fill that out so we can learn more about you all. It's a short poll. If you look at the right side of your screen, you'll be able to see that. And it has a couple questions so we can understand more about who's watching and what you all think about this conversation. And again, if you have any questions, we'll be doing a question and answer session at the end. So you can type in your questions on the chat box and then also mention who that question is addressing. So if that's for Dr. Samira or any of our other speakers who will be going up shortly, just mention that as well so we can know who should answer it. Additionally, we should also, if you're on social media, we can take this conversation to Twitter. So you can tweet out gems that you're hearing from our speakers with the hashtag Faith on Campus. And both MSA National and Yaqeen Institute are on Twitter as well. So we'd love to retweet what you're sharing. And moving on to our next speaker, inshallah. Our next speaker is Chaplain Abdul Malik Ryan. And just a little bit of a bio on him. He was born in Chicago, Illinois. He studied African-American history, and his encounter with the life of Malcolm X led to his accepting Islam in 1994, mashallah. He's one of the founders of Iman. Iman is the Inner City Muslim Action Network. And he is a DePaul graduate and chaplain at the University in Chicago since 2009. He graduated from Georgetown University Law School in 1998 and worked for 14 years as an attorney and guardian for foster children in Chicago. So I'd like to turn it over to you next to talk more about the importance of being involved in MSAs and what we can do to make sure that MSAs are safe spaces for our communities, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakallah khair for that. And thanks to Dr. Samira, who I think her presentation really set the stage well in terms of setting the broader context in which both in the Muslim community more broadly and in the broader culture that we live in which students come to campus. And when they come here, what then the MSA means to them and what they perceive it as. I wanted to start just with a brief this is my habit as someone who gives khutbahs, to start with a brief story that I think will relate and help you remember the couple of key points that I want to make in the short time that I have. We know when you think about community, and I really think of MSA as being your community on campus. And really, when we think of what we want an MSA to be or what it has the potential to be, I just think of everything what we want a community to be and what we want a community to represent and the needs we want it to fulfill. And alhamdulillah, here at DePaul, we call our MSA Ummah, United Muslims Moving Ahead, but it represents a sense of this is the community for all the Muslims on campus. But in this Surah Al-Hujurat, which is one of the, we know, a surah that we often look to as a model, laying out a model of what a community should be and certain aspects people should have in community life. One of the, there's a beautiful hadith that's mentioned in the tafsir of that surah that I think sets the stage, and we won't go into detail about it, but just to mention it. We know that in Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti nabi. That, oh, you who believe, don't raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, as many of us know, there's a few different incidents that are related as being kind of the causes of this being revealed. But one of the beautiful incidents is that a man named Thabit ibn Qais radiallahu an, one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was actually known to be a good speaker and to have a loud voice and to be a great orator, when he heard this ayah, he thought that the ayah was referring to him, and so he became very down and very depressed. And one of the beautiful thing that I want to mention is that what it relates in the story is that the Prophet ﷺ missed Thabit ibn Qais. So the Prophet ﷺ missed him, and he sent people to go look and find out what was going on with Thabit. And the next thing that happens is that Thabit mentions this is his concern, this is what he's worried about, and the Prophet ﷺ, he doesn't laugh it off or he doesn't ignore it. He instead, ﷺ, he says, no, you are not a person who's destroyed. You're not a person who's wasted your good deeds, but rather you are from the people of Jannah. And this recognition by the Prophet ﷺ, and Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu ends the hadith that we used to see Thabit walking around amongst us, and we would look at him as this, know that he was one of the people of Jannah. So that you see that the enormous shift that this made, this action of the Prophet ﷺ, and how beautifully it was in embracing him into the community. Now, what do we see here? And these are the things that I want to mention. One, we see that the Prophet ﷺ, of course, had the best of communities, and he had a beautiful community. He had a community where people, if you weren't there, you would be missed. And that when you came there, people were happy to see you and people affirmed you. So this is the most important thing I think that we need in our MSAs, is that it fulfills, as Dr. Samira mentioned, this need that all people have, but especially people who are finding themselves and working out identities, they need to have a community. So the MSA needs to strive to be that community for as many people as possible. You need to make people feel that this is a place that when they come there, people are happy to see them. And if they're missing, if they're not there, that people will miss them and people will inquire after them and people will try to find out how well they are. And secondly, we need to, as we'll talk about a little later on, we need to embrace people's concerns, people's questions, people's realities. We need to take them seriously, and we need to effectively engage them. And sometimes that's just being with someone, accompanying them in their suffering and their pain, and sometimes that's answering questions that they have, and sometimes that's helping them with actual needs that they have. It could be a lot of different things, but it's responding to the needs that people in the community have. Now, one of the beautiful things about Muslim communities on campus is that this can be difficult. As Dr. Samira mentioned, Muslim students are coming from a context where they may have a certain experience with the Muslim community, which was not what I'm describing as the ideal community. It was not a thing where every time they went there, they felt people were happy to see them. You know, the work Yaqeen has done on how our youth describe their experience with masajid growing up is not that they feel like whenever they go there, people are happy to see them, and that whenever they're not there, people miss them and want them to come. They often have an opposite experience of that. And so people may bring that assumption to what a Muslim community on campus will be like, as well as the fact that people are just dealing with other things and there's so many other concerns that they have. I always remind myself that, because being part of Ummah and being part of the MSA here at DePaul was such an important shift in my life. It changed everything about my life because I accepted Islam and I dedicated my life to a certain path. But when I arrived at DePaul, I was a student who had grown up Catholic and didn't have necessarily anything against the Catholic religion, but if someone had asked me to come to the Catholic students group or to come to mass on campus, I would have looked at them like they were crazy. I would not have understood why I would do that. When I arrived on college campus, my first thing wasn't getting involved in religious worship and stuff. So we always have to remind ourselves that we have both kinds of people. We have people who have been looking forward to the MSA experience, looking forward to being involved in college and being an activist or being someone learning more about their deen. And that's beautiful. But we also have other people who have not, when they thought of their college experience and when they thought of what they were looking forward to, that was not what they had in mind. That was not part, the MSA did not necessarily play a huge part in that. And you have to deal with all of that. You also have to deal with the fact that people look to the MSA as a community, yes, but as different types of communities. Some people are, as I said, are looking at it just for a social opportunity to meet other people or to network for jobs or to be with other people who look like them in terms of a certain ethnicity or a certain cultural background or speak a certain language. Other people are looking to find a place where people are going to be activists and people are going to get involved in change. Other people are looking to the MSA as a place, just a refuge from the broader culture and the broader campus, which they may feel is hostile to them or where they can't be fully themselves. Other people may look to it as a place to really just make their prayers and just go and make their prayers and do their basic minimum, but not necessarily stretch themselves. Other people may look at it as an intellectual pursuit, as somewhere to go and grow in the deen and grow in their knowledge. And you know, when I was becoming Muslim and then in some of the years after that, the stereotype of the MSA was kind of a place where there was like serious contention between different groups and different methodologies and different ideas, and people were trying to think about how whose vision of what Islam was all about would prevail. And it's easy to mock those days because there was a lot of silly things that went on, but sometimes it's also easy to look back on those days with nostalgia, because I think in my experience on a college campus, and every campus differs a great deal, like there's a great diversity among campuses and among individuals on those campuses. But in my experience on campus, really the biggest thing that we're fighting is either apathy about Islam or people just being overwhelmed with other things, so they're not concentrating on their Islam and their growth. So a lot of times I long for the days when we had maybe people who were passionate about Islam and very committed to Islam, but maybe a little overzealous, because I think it's easier as someone who tries to be a mentor and work with young people. Sometimes it's easier to channel that zeal in a more positive direction, especially if it's sincere, than to kind of, it's a bigger, broader task when you look at someone who's overwhelmed with other things or someone who really has an apathy towards the deen. To try to enliven that is a harder task. But if that's the task that we have, then we need to embrace it. And it's really, so many beautiful things happen on campus, and I think it's very important for us to be excited about that and to be excited about the potential of that. One of the beautiful things that I loved about whoever put together the promotion for this event is that it led with, and I should have known that coming from Yaqeen, alhamdulillah, but it led with the positives of the potential of the MSAs and all the good things that happen on campus. I think too often we, out of a good need, which is that desire to recognize reality, as I said, was important with the Prophet ﷺ, to recognize reality and recognize what's going on with people. But sometimes we lead with that, and sometimes we lead with, we kind of try to encourage people and kind of motivate people to care about Muslims on campus or Muslims anywhere else, or Muslim youth especially, by stressing the negative and by painting a picture of a disaster that you have to step in to save, because we think this is the only way that we can get people to act, to get out of their own apathy and to support causes. And perhaps it works, because I know many people who raise money and do things, they use these tactics, and I know perhaps it works. And again, it's important to acknowledge the realities, but I just think, as someone who has dedicated my life to working with youth and to working with Muslim college students, that when I get up in the morning and come to work, I'm not thinking I have to save all these kids who are going on this disastrous path. I'm thinking, how much potential do these beautiful youth have? How much potential does this community have? How much good do I see them doing? And how much I want to be a part of that and share in that good. So the last thing, the last topic that I wanted to move on to is, if we want to so the community has to be a place where people feel safe, first and foremost, like we said, a place where they feel welcome, a place that they feel is a real community, where they feel safe, because then once you have that established, that feeling of safety, then you can begin to push people and to help them to grow. Because we don't just want the MSA or any community to just be a place of comfort where people relax and then leave. You want it ideally to be a place where people grow, where people stretch themselves, where people improve themselves. And but they can only really do that in a healthy way if they feel safe from the beginning, if they feel that there is a real community there. So we know that even if you look at a classroom setting, even if you look at any other setting, even if you think of sports teams or something like that, you have to have that feeling that I'm bought into the team. I love everyone around me. I know that they're not against me, that something common unites us, and therefore we're going to work hard and push each other in order to get to that goal. Because we all know if you feel you're in a discussion with someone where you feel unsafe, all you can do is be defensive. And unfortunately, Muslims, a lot of times when we discuss especially controversial issues, but really when we discuss any issues related to our faith, we're used to being very defensive. And when you're defensive, and this is with non-Muslims or even with other Muslims, and when you're defensive, you're not being honest. You're saying what you want the other person to hear or what you think they need to hear or something like that, but you're not being very honest about the issues you're dealing with or what you're grappling with. And when that happens, you cannot grow. You cannot stretch yourself. Whereas when you establish an environment in an MSA where everyone feels comfortable with each other, where everyone feels, and that's a hard task, I know. I know sometimes as a chaplain I can be a little oblivious to certain things, but no community is utopia. And I know that it takes a lot of hard work to establish that situation where people really feel safe with each other. But when you can do it, whether it's with a small subgroup of the MSA or whether it's with, you want it to be as large and broad as possible part of the MSA, when you establish that comfort, then people can really challenge each other and people can really be honest and people can really deal with issues and people can try to grow. And then one of the challenges I think that makes this kind of discussion really important is that Muslims, especially on college campus, are used to the discussions they have outside of the MSA or outside of the Muslim community, sometimes have a higher level of that intellectual engagement. They have a higher level of that seriousness and honesty. And then they go into the Muslim community and they're very superficial, as we sometimes call Sunday school type discussions of things. And that begins to weigh on their mind, whether consciously or subconsciously, of how they view Islam and how they view their relationship to Islam, in that they feel one is a more intellectually sophisticated, more sincere engagement, and one is something about show and about superficial statement of beliefs that you haven't really reckoned with, and things like that. So we want to be the MSA. One of the beautiful things about MSAs is it's a place where people encounter Muslims who have different experiences than them, different backgrounds than them, and yes, even different ideas than them and different ways of approaching Islam. But what I think ideally for growth, intellectual growth, spiritual growth, what you want to accomplish is an environment where people can speak about those things, not in a way, and this is the challenge of kind of the liberal pluralist college environment, not in a way of saying, oh, I see that we have different ideas, I see different people think different things, therefore people should just think whatever they want. No, we want to go to a place where I see that there are people, may have some different ideas, we may have different levels of knowledge, different gifts to share with each other. Let's have a serious discussion where different people can present what they think you should believe and make the case for it, and make the case why it's beautiful, and make the case why it's true, and that if you're inspired by it, you can grab onto that and help it to guide your life. And I think if we set an environment intellectually and spiritually where people can do things like that, I think you'll see tremendous potential for growth. And this is whether it's an intellectual environment or whether it's in the service environment or whether it's in the activist environment. In every environment, whatever people are trying to be in, we want to set that environment for growth. And sometimes people may come in wanting a certain thing and you have to push them to the other thing, but again, always with this attitude of safety, always this attitude of, I'm still going to love you, I'm still going to miss you, I'm still going to be happy to see you regardless of whether you take this path or regardless of whether you agree with me or not. You're still part of the community and you can never ever doubt that. So hopefully that is something that can set the stage for what we want to do with these conviction circles, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Really appreciate that, Chaplain Abdul Malik. It was beautiful to hear you talk about the MSA in such a positive way and to see the potential that we have. So moving onward to our next speaker, but before that, a couple other announcements. Again, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and then we will answer them in the question and answer session. Just make sure that you put in who that question is addressed to from our speakers so that we know exactly who should answer it. And in addition to that, we have a hashtag Faith on Campus. If you'd like to tweet anything out, any of the gems that our speakers are dropping, please do so that we can take this conversation to our social media as well. So moving on to our next speaker, Sheikh Omar Suleiman. I'll do a quick introduction, inshallah. Imam Omar Suleiman is the founder and president of the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research, and he's an adjunct professor of Islamic Studies in the Graduate Liberal Studies program at Southern Methodist University. He holds a bachelor in accounting, a bachelor's in Islamic law, master's in Islamic finance, and a master's in political history, and is currently pursuing a PhD, mashallah, in Islamic thought and civilization from the International Islamic University of Malaysia. So without further ado, Sheikh Omar Suleiman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. Ustadh Abdul Malik, I truly appreciated your presentation, Dr. Samira as well. And I kind of had to do a double take when you were doing your talk, because I want to show you my bookshelf, all right? So we're going to move right quick. And there was a particular book that stood out. Where's it at? Revolution by the Book. So you've got Revolution by the Book on your bookshelf, and I've got it. So I had to turn around and see if you were in my house, and I wasn't paying attention. So Jazakallah khair for the beautiful words, and for the work that you're doing, alhamdulillah, and the chaplaincy, and Dr. Samira as well with the FYI, and all the great work that the MSA does as well. You know, subhanAllah, when Ustadh Abdul Malik was being introduced, he found his inspiration through Malcolm X, and that's something that I want us all to take pause for a moment and just appreciate and reflect on, that so many people found Islam through Malcolm X, and so many people found confidence and strength through Malcolm X. Malcolm recognized, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the civil rights movement, this was perhaps his greatest intervention, that the greatest casualty in the racism and discrimination that African Americans faced and continue to face today was Black consciousness. And that's why the very famous statement of Malcolm X, who taught you to hate yourself, who taught you to hate the color of your skin, the texture of your hair, the shape of your nose, all the way to the soles of your feet. That was something very special, that Malcolm recognized that it was impossible for young Black people in America to not hate themselves because of the amount of hatred that they were receiving on the outside, and for that pressure to not at some point penetrate the very internal being which defines the human being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran. So what does that mean in terms of internalized racism? What we recognize at Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research is that with the Islamophobic environment that's around us and the amount of pressure that Muslims are facing, it already wasn't easy pre-9/11 to be Muslim in America, just because of the presence of shahawat, the presence of desires and the accessibility to those desires. And that's what the Prophet, peace be upon him, was talking about when he spoke about that, when he told the companions that behind you are days that will require great patience, and to have patience in those days would be like holding on to a burning piece of hot coal. And the Prophet ﷺ said the reward of those people is 50 times the reward of the Sahaba. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ was talking about that patience that's required there, he wasn't talking about as-sabr ala al-bala, he was talking about as-sabr ala al-shahawat. Sabr ala al-bala is patience with persecution. Sabr with shahawat, patience with desires, is what the Prophet, peace be upon him, was talking about, because he was talking to a group of people that suffered persecution that was far greater than any generation that would come after them, particularly our generation. If you think about the Islamophobia the Sahaba faced and the Islamophobia we faced, really their persecution was on a much greater level than any persecution that we are facing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and not to test us beyond our scope. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, was talking about patience with your desires. And if you think about it, though, there is a connection between the two. If your belief is not strong enough, it's not worth it to hold on to that burning piece of hot coal. If your belief is not strong enough, if you don't know why it's worth it to be Muslim, then why not just save myself the headache and not invite upon myself all of this pressure and stress of being a Muslim in society, specifically on a college campus where the idea of living life to the fullest is most amplified, right? As opposed to living righteously, right? That's a foreign concept there. Islam has to be worth it, right? Islam has to be worth it. And what we focus on is nurturing. We have three things that we focus on, three areas of research: dismantling doubts, which is what Islam isn't. So the defense part of this, so clarifying issues surrounding Islam, because eventually, if you're constantly hearing these attacks on Islam and you have not been equipped to respond to those attacks, the problem is not just the next time you get asked that question on the outside. The problem is when you're laying in bed at night or when you're in your circle of friends and you yourself are not so sure how to answer that question. So what Islam isn't is dismantling doubts. Nurturing conviction is a sense of belief, what Islam is, okay? Why do we take the claim of prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ so seriously? How do we know God exists? How do we reconcile things that we see around us that shake one's belief in God with the existence of an all-wise, all-merciful, all-just God? How do we know that the Quran is infallible, right? We have to continue to nurture that belief. And if you think about what roots are, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes that tree of faith in Surah Ibrahim, and he directly connects the fruits of the tree of faith, that the Muslim is able to provide shade for other people and able to provide fruits from their iman because of their strong roots. The roots are important to continue to nourish. So nurturing conviction is not something that you do once, لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعْ إِيمَانِهِمْ, so that you increase faith upon faith upon faith, so that you continue to strengthen that conviction, so that even when there is great wind and when there is a storm, you bend but you never break. Your faith is able to withstand that pressure, because at the end of the day, the Prophet ﷺ did not say that following his example would be easy. The Prophet, peace be upon him, did not say that you would have Jannah on earth, paradise on earth, if you followed him. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave us something that is more important than all that, and it's the truth, right? So what Islam is, and then the last one is inspiring contribution, what Islam does, right? Because there's this idea, and when you talk about Malcolm in particular, by the way, and I think there's so much we can learn from him. He truly is a teacher to us. One of the things that he taught was that that Black people in America had been disconnected from their history. They're taught that their history starts with slavery, and slavery is not the start of their history. Slavery is an interruption of their history, right? It's an interruption of the history of Africa. It's an interruption of the history of Black people. Likewise, when it comes to Muslims, we are being taught that our religion is to be associated with barbarity, with regression, that our religion has held back mankind, and that abiding by the principles of our religion, which we have not fully gained conviction in, that by abiding by those principles, we hinder our own potential to grow. And we're not able to reach the fullest of our potential in contribution. And we have a history of contribution at a global level, at a collective level. And we believe that the reason why the Muslim world is backwards is because of its relinquishing of Islamic ethics, not because of Islam. So it has to be a holistic, understanding of Islam, and that's the beauty of the Revolution by the book by Imam Jamil Amin. May Allah Subhanahu wa Taala make it easy for him and free him. One of the things that he taught was that revolution is not merely being revolutionary in your politics. It's not merely being culturally revolutionary. But if you think about it, Tawheed and monotheism and placing God above your own desire, saying that God's pleasure is worth more than me giving into these temporary pleasures, that also is revolutionary, right? That's also something for us to abide by. And a lot of times when you get on campus, and this is the imbalance that we have, some people, when it comes to religion, getting religious means also becoming a bad person somehow, right? So somehow with the development of religion, you become worse in your character. For some other people, getting to religion merely means increasing in volunteerism and being a better person in the societal sense. But Islam pairs those things together. You have to grow theologically. You have to develop your iman, develop your faith, so that you don't spiritually burn out, because the one who doesn't have cannot give. So you grow your faith, you nourish your faith, so that you're not that MSA student that disappears once they leave college, because that happens to a lot of people. They disappear right when they finish college because they burn out. The last thing I want to say here as we fade into curriculum, inshallah ta'ala, okay? When it comes to curriculum, when it comes to halaqat, when it comes to people sitting together, yes, the MSA has to be a space where people can come together and people can bond, and you can see other Muslims on campus that are struggling just like you're struggling, and together, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. You enjoin one another in truth, and you enjoin one another in patience upon that truth. But there's something more than that. There has to be an engaging curriculum, something that draws you together on a regular basis, so that when you sit together, you're studying in a structured way issues that are relevant to the day-to-day questioning that you face and the day-to-day pressures that you are subjected to. There has to be something that you regularly come to grow your character, to grow your faith, to grow your ability to contribute, to give, right? That has to continue. And a lot of times we discount the weekly halaqah. Oh, now we're in the age, I'll just watch it online. I'll watch a video, I'll listen to a lecture. But you know what? When Allah blesses us to congregate with one another, to come together with one another, and to remember Him, and to think about how we can be better servants of Him. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, talked about the angels surrounding those people, and as the angels surround those people, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, said they go back to Allah and they report the names of those people that are sitting with one another. And the angels mention a person who was not there for the sake of Allah. They kind of just got brought into it, right? It was peer pressure in a good way, right? And that's the benefit of having good friends, is that they push you to do good things that you might not have done otherwise, right? As opposed to bad friends, right? So, just came there because, okay, well, it's an expectation at this point. It's put on my calendar. Everyone else is going to show up there. They're going to ask me why I wasn't there. All right, fine, let's go. The Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned that Allah responds that this group of people, whoever sits with them, la yashqa, they will not be deprived. What that means is that there's a direct connection between the presence of believers around you and the angels shading those gatherings, and your ability to grow, and your ability to give, and your ability to persevere. If the angels surrounding Asiya, alayhi salam, Asiya, a woman with perfect faith, as she was being tortured by Fir'aun, again, that's a form of persecution and pressure that none of us could imagine. If the angels surrounding her with their wings allowed her to laugh at the torture and oppression of Fir'aun, then what then of us with the pressures that we're facing on the outside, what effect would the angels surrounding us as we come together and we study in a structured way and we exchange ideas with one another and we encourage one another to maintain faith and to not allow ourselves to become part of that 23% of Muslims that no longer identify with Islam born in America, or that 1/2 of people that committed zina or or drank or partied or doubted God or whatever it is, or committed some sort of horrible deed. We refuse to be a part of that statistic. Instead, we want to be with those 8 people that are sitting together and that are remembering Allah together and that are talking about how to be better believers and talking about how to be better people, because religion and character go hand in hand. And that's the effect of the angels surrounding us with their wings. So with that, alhamdulillah, what we're doing at Yaqeen now is we're taking all of our research and we're turning it into curriculum. We have a curriculum team that's working full-time to turn all of those research publications into curriculum that can be studied by MSAs, by youth groups, by different groups of people, right? A structured way to study those issues that are relevant to you and that can give you a holistic understanding to ward off the questions and inshallah to ward off the pressure of being a Muslim on a college campus as well. These are called conviction circles, and inshallah ta'ala, Yaqeen and the MSA are now going into a national partnership to make sure that we can offer these conviction circles on every single college campus, inshallah, that Muslims can get together on a weekly basis and can grow themselves through these well thought out, well structured conviction circles, inshallah ta'ala. So it's not just randomness. The randomness is important when it comes to basketball and stuff like that. And maybe you could switch up the food and not have biryani every single time you invite people to an MSA gathering, but a structured way of learning, inshallah ta'ala, and discussion questions and packets that can engage each and every single member of that circle, inshallah ta'ala. So I'd like to hand it over, inshallah ta'ala. I don't want to jump over the moderator, but Sister Tasneem Al-Qiq, who is our curriculum director at Yaqeen Institute, inshallah ta'ala, and who's been at the head of this project of conviction circles. We'll talk a little bit more about, inshallah, how to get that going on your campus. Jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, well, I think that was an introduction for you, Sister Tasneem, unless you'd like me to talk further. But excited to hear what you'll be talking about as the Director of Curriculum Development at Yaqeen Institute. I guess we can go on from there if you'd like to move forward.
Yes, perfect. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Tasneem, and alhamdulillah, I have the honor and privilege of helping direct the curriculum team for Yaqeen. And it's pretty exciting for me for a number of reasons, because we sort of had to brainstorm the different options of, we have all this Yaqeen material, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to present it? How are we going to, collect it so students can easily directly engage with it? And so what happened was I thought about my own personal experiences. Sorry, I have to make this clear because I saw someone on the chat say they're from OSU. I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad, so go blue. And alhamdulillah, we had a phenomenal MSA there. We had a very strong MSA program, and we were also blessed to have a great chaplaincy program, a Muslim life program. And so we had it really pretty lucky. But at the same time, there was still so much more that we wanted and that we could have had, right? And so part of the MSA, serving that for several years, we would have our Thursday night halaqas, consistently having different speakers and different ways to just try to grow our knowledge, right? And one problem we had most of the time was, okay, we don't have a speaker this week. What are we going to do? How are we going to fill in the gaps? And sometimes it wasn't just about not finding a speaker, but it was about, well, we want to do something consistent. We want to do something that's building up on something else, not just, doing one topic here and there, another topic here and there, but we wanted something that would really help us foster critical thinking skills, self-development, and just ways to really better ourselves, both in terms of knowledge and in character. And so when we were brainstorming what we would do with the Yaqeen material, one of the best options that we thought of was having these conviction circles. Creating content, so whether it's in your MSA, whether it's you and a group of friends, this doesn't have to necessarily be on a college campus, right? This was something that we wanted, me and a group of friends back in high school. This is something that I would love to have as a graduate student still. But having material, having content that's relevant. We're using Yaqeen publications, as Sheikh Umar just mentioned. Everything we're doing, dismantling doubts, nurturing conviction, all of that stuff is something that should be directly relevant to you, and it's something that you want to be learning. You want to be learning, you know, about honor killings, about Islamic law, about abortion, all of these different topics, because they're directly relevant. And whether or not you have asked a lot of those questions before, you know, Islamic spirituality, how to be a mindful Muslim, if you haven't asked those questions to yourselves now, someone might be asking you a question now, you know, down the line, or you might be asking yourself those same questions. And so we wanted to be able to create a system where you could directly engage with those texts. So to break it down just a bit, what we did was we took all of the Yaqeen publications and we organized them based off of theme. So we have, you know, various themes. We're covering, inshallah, theology, aqidah, you know, the case for Allah's existence. Why does Allah, you know, why does God ask people to worship him? Why does evil exist? We have themes like the seed of the Prophet ﷺ, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, what was his message, his character. Like I mentioned, Islamic law, you know, papers on honor killings, on stoning, hand cutting, all of that stuff. And essentially we go through these various themes in every module. Now the module is about is exactly 8 units, which will take about 8 to 10 weeks. And most college campuses, most college semesters are approximately 13 weeks. The first couple weeks you're still settling in, trying to, you know, get your head on straight. And the last couple weeks you got exams, right? So you've got almost a perfect module to fit during that fall, winter, summer semester, whatever the case is. And what you'll do is you'll go essentially through the first module and later on, obviously, secondary modules, but you're going through these units in a logical, coherent manner. So we're starting off with topics on theology, topics on, you know, history and the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And then towards the end of the module, we're hitting those really contemporary topics, the controversies, debates, what's going on in the background, what are the main questions, all of that fun stuff. And then wrapping up the module with some topic on Islamic spirituality to really to end it off strong. You want to be able to go through all of that material and talk about, okay, so now what can I do as a, you know, as a better human being, as a better Muslim, to foster my, again, that self-development. And so what I want to do now is actually share my screen. And I will stop talking because I think there's a little glitch. And I'll go ahead and show you guys what we've been working on. Okay, so inshallah you guys should be able to see what I have open now. And I've gotten confirmation of that. So this is what a sample content packet is going to look like. And I'm just going to walk you through a few different examples. Number one, of course, the cover page. We have the title, the author, everything that's going on. And what I think is the most convenient aspect is having the reading time. I know what it's like to be a college kid. I know what it's like to be a high school student, wherever you are. We're all very busy. And so you want to know exactly, you know, how much time should I commit? Once you see that number, you know, okay, before lunch, you know, before my bio class, whatever it is, I've got those 35 minutes. I can get through this. We really want you guys to be reading the publications in full. Let me go ahead and make this bigger for you guys. You really want to be going into these publications in full. We don't want we want you guys to be to deeply really engage into these texts. And then we have our key over here. So you know, whether it's discussion questions, reflection questions, all of this stuff, and I'll go through the samples, but that is going to be your key. So at the beginning of each content packet, we'll be providing an overview and an executive summary. Now, we don't want you guys to just fall back and only read the overview and summaries before you know, meet up with your conviction circle, you meet up for discussion, but this is more as a means to refresh your memory beforehand. Perhaps you read the publication a few days before, whatever the case is, this is to jog your memory at the beginning of the discussion and hopefully be a nice resource. And at the beginning of each of these publications, when you have these overviews and executive summaries, what we do is on the margin of the page, we have all of the supplementary material. You know, we have, Yaqeen doesn't just publish, you know, papers and articles, but, you know, we have the Yaqeen effect, right? So we have an infographic to see the charts and graphics for all of everything that's going through. An audiobook, this I think is super convenient for us as college kids because, you know, you're commuting to campus, you're walking around, whatever the case is, you're at the gym, you can just pop in the audiobook if you don't have time to read. And then
Tasneem,
behind the
sorry,
scenes video. So
just
you
to
want to know,
interrupt you
okay, why did the author decide to go ahead and write this publication? Why is it relevant to him or her, and why should it be relevant to me? So just sort of that background supplementary information will always be on that first page. And then on the second page, so this is the continuation of the executive summary. On the second page, what you'll have are the major discussion and reflection questions. Now, these are the questions that are going to be going into sort of the main themes of the paper, what we really want you to be walking away with. So these are the questions we sort of obviously cannot make, we cannot make mandatory. Can you guys not hear me? Okay. So these are the questions that we want to make mandatory and make clear. And okay, my screen is black. Sorry. Can you guys see? Can you guys see now?
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Is it? And can you see it now?
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. So I'll just keep it on here. So it's on the second page where you have that executive summary. These discussion reflection questions, as I was mentioning, they're comprehensive questions, right? So these are the ones that we're not making mandatory, but if you really want to get to the essence of the paper, this is, these are going to be your general questions. And then after that, the paper begins, and it's conveniently, side by side on the margins. So you have the introduction. This is the actual publication that you can find on the website. And now you have the deeper questions that really go into more detail. And so we have questions that are like our connection questions. How does this directly relate to me? How does it directly relate to my community? And so we're asking specific questions that are appearing on this page or, similar pages. And what I think is really fun, sorry, I get really excited about this stuff, but what's also really cool is that we have background information, right? So a lot of times, the author might assume that everyone has a certain level of knowledge, or, there are certain words that everyone might not be familiar with, right? So we have, key facts, we have concepts, terminology, all clarified here in the margins. So in the event that something doesn't make sense to you, we try to gauge as best as possible in order to clarify. And so again, just going through this, just typical discussion reflection questions. And just a couple more before I switch back is we also have something, like planning. What directly can I take away from this paper and begin implementing in my life, right? So over here on this page, we're talking about disturbing media reports and how that's affecting us. What can, think of ways you can counteract this. And this is something, again, you want to be returning to your group and discussing how can you make that difference. And then a couple last things. This page, for example, talks about gender roles and sexuality. What has Yaqeen already written about this stuff? Well, we have, 2 publications that will be cited on the side. So anything that's mentioned in the margins as well, we want to provide you quick links to Yaqeen publications that have gone into to further detail. So if that's a topic that you're interested in, you can find more information. And likewise, if there's a Yaqeen publication that hasn't been written on it, we still provide suggested sources for further reading that's external to our database. And inshallah, we'll obviously always be trying to grow, but until then, we're still providing external sources to really quench your thirst for knowledge in this particular field. And last but not least, on the notes page, that we want to encourage you guys all to obviously print out the publication in full and write notes in the margins, but we'll also have a final page for you all to take your notes. Okay, so just to wrap up, a couple of points. So number one, we will be providing everyone who is participating in the conviction circles with a starter kit. And that's going to basically walk you through everything I've just told you. It'll have everything in detail. So if you feel like this is a little overwhelming, don't worry, we'll have that written down and clarified. And the second more exciting thing is that we're also launching an online portal. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. Number one, if you're, the conviction circle, you don't have a chaplain on campus, you don't have a teacher or someone who's, quote unquote, more qualified to lead, and you're just a student who's leading the discussion, there are going to be questions that you can't answer, or there are going to be just difficult topics to navigate. And so what we want to do this online portal is give you that advice. So what happens if, you know, you're dealing with a sensitive topic? What happens if there's questions you can't answer? What happens if, you know, so all of the potential different obstacles you might face by conducting or participating in a conviction circle, those are all things that we're going to attempt to tackle, inshallah, on this online portal. And the reason I mention this is because that's really where you guys come in, right? So we will be providing feedback forms and just ways we want to keep directly in touch with every group. We want to know really the hurdles you're facing, the successes you found, the questions you want answered. And then through that, on the online portal, we can have you know, different live Q&As. We can have guest scholars, whatever the case is, but we really want to tailor this to your needs. We really want this to make this the most beneficial experience for you all. All of us have been there where you have all been, and we know what it's like, and we really want to grow, you know, improve that experience, and inshallah be able to grow together through that. So with that, I'll go ahead and end. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, Jazakallah khair, Sister Tasneem. So we will be jumping into Q&A, but before then, I have a quick plug that I'd like to do, and it's kind of exciting because it's very special for those of you that are on this webinar right now. So as I mentioned before, I'm on board for MSA National, and MSA National is an organization that's been around for quite a while, since 1963, and we strive to provide resources for Muslim college students by supporting MSAs, local MSAs, as well as MSA councils. So if you're in Texas, there's a Lone Star Council. If you're in California, there's MSA West. A special shout out to UC Davis, my alma mater, as well. So for those of you that may not know, MSA National has an annual conference, and this year's conference is in Houston, Texas. It'll be during Labor Day weekend. And there is a special code that we have for a promo code for registration. If you're interested, we have more information on our website for msanational.org. We also have a Facebook page that you can find us at. MSA National is our Facebook page, and then the conference you can look up. Our theme this year is Generation Thrive, Our Ancestors' Wildest Dreams. So understanding and learning from the Muslim leaders that have come before us, such as Malcolm X, who we mentioned on this webinar. So the code is Faith on Campus 50. And you put in that code when you register, you can get close to 50% off the registration, which I know is a big deal for all of us that are college students, because it can be really helpful in bringing down the cost to attend the conference. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I reach out to all of our social media outlets for MSA National, and happy to provide you with more information. So we can provide more resources to you, not just at the conference, but year-round. So that is one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing that Tasneem also mentioned for the conviction circles, if you'd like more information on that online, you can go onto the website yaqeeninstitute.org/conviction circles. So with that being said, I'd like to move on to questions. We have time for only a couple questions. So if we don't get to yours, we apologize. You can tweet them out to the speakers, as well as using the hashtag Faith on Campus, and we'll try to get those answered for you, inshallah. And hopefully if you join in for the conviction circles on your MSA campuses, we can have longer relationship with all of you so we can help answer your questions. So in addition to that, during conference, actually, we'll have Sister Tasneem and Sheikh Omar speaking at a workshop to discuss conviction circles in more detail. So if you'll be coming, which I hope you will, you can ask more questions in person and learn more about how to bring conviction circles to your campus. So with that, I'll move on to our first question, which is about the conviction circle. So for Sister Tasneem, the question is, I haven't studied Islam formally and have not read the Yaqeen publications. Can I still start and lead a conviction circle at my school?
That's a phenomenal question. So I'm not sure who asked this question, but yes, and that's exactly why I want to have this online portal. Of course, when you're leading that discussion, inshallah, we hope that you can read the publication for that week prior, and any questions that you encounter, any difficulties you encounter, we will have, email addresses provided. We'll have our feedback forms online, and we can help you, directly navigate that, inshallah. But the plan is, the assumption really is that it's going to be fellow students leading this. We realize that most universities at this point don't have chaplains, so we want to be there to accommodate as best as we can.
Great, thank you. And then before I move on to the other questions, since we are running out of time, I would ask the speakers to keep it to under 2 minutes, which you did, Sister Tasneem, thank you. So for Chaplain Abdul Malik, how can we be inclusive as an MSA where the spectrum of religiosity is so wide? And how can we make it a safe space? I want our MSA to be open about any faith crisis so that we can grow together.
MashaAllah. That is a good question. And sometimes it's easy to speak flowery language about what we want from a community, but it can be more difficult to make that a reality. But I will say that I want to recognize how it's sometimes difficult. People come, as I alluded to in my talk, people are coming with all kinds of different experiences with the community that you can't control. People are coming with all kinds of current issues they're struggling with that you may not know about or you can't control. And then none of us can control the whole community they're entering into. Like, we can try to be super nice to someone and they can have a bad experience with someone else, and then they can feel not safe or not welcome in the community. So it's, alhamdulillah, being a chaplain, you have hopefully a better chance to set a tone and to let people know that. But I say, whether you have a chaplain or not, if you're someone in leadership or you're someone who's in concern at an MSA, just make it clear that this is a place for everyone. This is a place where everyone is welcome. This is a place where everyone's embraced, regardless of differences that we may have. You know, it's a beautiful, I remember, you know, I'm reminded of the beautiful statement attributed to Imam Shafi'i, where the man said that I never saw anyone more wise than Imam Shafi'i, that I had an argument with him one day and we separated from each other. And then so beautifully he said, he saw me later on, he took me by the hand and said, can't we be brothers even if we disagree about an issue? And so that's the attitude that we have, that our brotherhood and sisterhood is not dependent on how religious you are or how or your particular religious opinions. Our brotherhood and sisterhood is bigger than that. Here at Ummah, I always let people know when they ask, can they join Ummah? I said, you're already part of Ummah. Like, you can't even get out of it if you wanted to. You're part of the group here and you're part of our community. And the last thing I'll mention is that although there are difficulties to it and there are challenges to it, I think a lot of times the challenges are different and the challenges are not as hard as we sometimes think in the abstract. We sometimes think in the abstract that in order to make someone feel welcome, because it mentioned different kinds of religiosity, I gotta be okay with what they're doing that I don't agree with, or I gotta be okay with this opinion they have that I think is wrong. But I've never, in my experience of trying to welcome people into the community and trying to make people feel welcome, I've never experienced someone coming to me, and I'm not saying it could never happen, but I've never experienced it, someone coming to me and telling me, I don't feel welcome unless you tell me you agree with this thing that I think. I don't feel welcome unless you tell me it's okay that I do this. I don't feel welcome. But I just said, regardless if I know or don't know that they do this or do that or think this or think that, I just treat them. I make sure to treat them as my brother or sister because that's how I feel about them and welcome them in. And I've always felt that and I've always experienced that works with people. So alhamdulillah, I think if you just go out and make that your intention and set that as your goal and act according to it, I think you'll be way more successful than you think. In the abstract, you may worry about it, but in practice, it will be easier than you think it is. Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. And our last question for this webinar is for Sheikh Omar. The question is, how are Muslim students and MSAs supposed to grapple and deal with the advent of postmodernism and liberalism when many of its core beliefs go against overall Islamic theology and orthodoxy? I don't know, 2 minutes to answer that question for you, Sheikh Omar. I can try.
2 minutes. I think that the first thing that you need to recognize is that our religion is one of solutions to legitimate problems. So often, legitimate problems and grievances are hijacked by illegitimate, incoherent agendas and programs. It's important for us as Muslims to speak to legitimate grievances and problems while drawing on our own tradition with its paradigms. And I think that Islam has many paradigms to offer and much to offer to really solve the problems that drive people to many of those isms in the first place. And let me just say this. I mean, and this it's as simple as this. We should not fall to the lie that we have attained some sort of moral enlightenment or perfection at this point. We are at one of the lowest points in the history of mankind, and so that's not merely the fault of ideology, but ideology has been used as a tool of exploitation and to harm many people. And so The idea that prescribed secularism is the solution to the world's problems. If that was the case, then you wouldn't have had the bloodiest century in the history of the world in the 20th century, more murders in the 20th century than any, all in the name of many different isms, communism, Nazism, fascism, and things of that sort. So it's important for us to draw on our own paradigms and to be critical thinkers. I think I'm over 2 minutes, so 10 seconds. In the era of Donald Trump, it is very easy for us to uncritically embrace all that we think embraces us. But we have to remain critical, sincere, always gracious, graceful, showing the manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and never failing to recognize that what we have is divinely sanctioned, and no one knows the creation of Allah better than Allah, because He created us.
Jazakallah khair for that response. So before we close with the dua, which Sheikh Omar, I hope you can close out with, I wanted to thank you all for attending this webinar and for joining us today. I hope that you can all work with us to bring conviction circles to your campus to help us root our faith on our campuses nationwide, inshallah. And I hope that I will see you all at the Houston conference. We'll be sending out more information on that. You can look up on our social media. And wanted to put in a plug again for the promo code, because I think it's a great deal for students. It's Faith on Campus 50. And if you have any other questions, any other ways that we can help and be beneficial to you as a Muslim student and to your campus, please feel free to reach out and connect with us, inshallah. So with that, Sheikh Omar, would you be willing to do the closing dua, please?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen our hearts with faith, to give us and to allow us the strength to persevere, to allow us to follow prophetic guidance in these troubling times. We ask Allah to be us, to allow us to be a source of mercy for all those that are around us, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, was sent as a mercy to all of us. We ask Allah to guide us when we fall off of the path, when we veer away. We ask Allah to rectify our hearts and rectify other hearts through us, to guide us and to guide through us. We ask Allah to protect us and protect our community and protect the innocent and the vulnerable from any form of harm. And we ask Allah to accept all of our small efforts to please Him, and to remove anything that would corrupt any of these good efforts and overlook our shortcomings, both when we sin and when we are deficient in our good. Allahumma ameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.